Hello, and welcome to the Simply Business Interview Podcast, a podcast created by business owners for business owners. I am your host, John Jennings. I believe that most business owners are working way too hard for much too little. And one of our issues is that we overcomplexify things. I believe the answers are almost always within us or within our reach. I like to say that I'm a simple man with simple ideas. So welcome to Simply Business.
All right. So today's going to be interesting. I have interviewed some interesting characters over 100 episodes, but I've never interviewed a clown. And today we literally are interviewing a clown, and we'll hear more about that. But Paul Miller is the Chief Goof Officer with a couple of companies and Circus Suites and Bircus Brewing and a whole other, I think he said, 3-ring circus of things. So, Paul, first, just tell us a little bit about your background, who you are, kind of what you do. There's a lot into what you do, so we're gonna go a lot of places today. But first, just give us the introduction.
Right on. Well, hello. I'm Paul Howland Miller. I'm a clown. Yes, clowns are like as if I'm the archetype. Okay. I mean, I'm not above birthday parties. Okay. I've done the birthday parties. I can make a few balloon animals. Okay. I mean, they're all variations on the dog. If it has a long neck, it's a giraffe. If it has big ears, it's a rabbit. So by no means am I a fantastic balloon twister, but I know some people who make a living working on cruise ships making balloon animals. Okay. Now that's weird. Okay. But from a simple perspective, and your Simply Business podcast. The circus is 258 years old. So it predates the United States of America. So, this year we're celebrating 250 years here as a nation. And it's interesting, but it was created in London, and a horse guy, it was a cavalry. Horses were high tech then, and they wanted to do tricks. So all these important people were doing horse tricks, and that's part of my narrative. Is we won our independence because some of Britain's best soldiers were doing horse tricks. So, which is silly, but George Washington loved to go to the circus. There was a circus in Philadelphia that he was a regular at, and it really is the very first media company that was for everyone. So rich people could get to the opera. And everyone could come to the circus. So to kind of simply boil it down, that's the business that I'm in.
Yeah. So, but you've done more than that. You've taken your passion, and you were in Ringling Brothers, right, for several years. So I
drove the clown car
in the big league of circuses, but you settled down from that to a more a little more traditional, but still very unique model, if you will, as you kind of brought the circus home in a way, in a really creative way. Tell us what you did there in Northern Kentucky in your town, and to kind of bring these different passions that you have together.
Well, I to get to the circus, I dropped out of college. From a branding perspective, I was studying a degree in dramatic performance, but we would rehearse for 8 weeks and then do a show 4 times. And I told the dean, I kind of felt like I was getting, that wasn't simply what I was doing. It was a degree in rehearsal. So I wanted to perform. So I dropped out of college in 1997 and lived on the circus train. So my room was 4 feet by 8 feet, and just like Dumbo, toured all over and lived many places. And I was on the soap operas, would balance a chair on my chin to get the attention of the casting directors, because there would be 30, 40 people going after one job. And how do you differentiate yourself? You do something, you hand them your resume, and then I bounce a chair on my chin. So then that led me to New York a couple years. I had a gig in Japan as a clown, lived in Chicago for 9 years, and have spent the past 16 years here in Northern Kentucky, in Ludlow, Kentucky, which is, you could see downtown Cincinnati. You could see the tallest building in Cincinnati, the Crew Tower, right from our little town. And that we came here to raise our kids. And Forgive my appearance. My eye is pretty messed up. Yesterday, my 20-year-old daughter and I hope we were practicing juggling clubs. 7. So you have to juggle them every other club. And I got bonked in the eye pretty good. So
I can't even
I'm
tell.
looking a little rough today, John. I'm sorry.
You're okay. I didn't even catch that.
I feel kind anyway. So we've been in Kentucky for 16 years, and the circus, like any business, is driven on talent. Who can you work with? Or I guess I'm part HR department because we've hosted artists from 50 different countries who've all come to Ludlow, Kentucky to participate in our circus. So I'm almost like the minor leagues. So there'll be a really great artist. Let's say Reina, this guy from Brazil. I got him his visa. He came to the United States. He performed. He just did 10 years with Cirque du Soleil. So he's making huge money.
Mhm.
And Canadian dollars versus Brazilian real, there's a pretty good exchange rate there.
Mhm.
But I secured a visa for an artist, Lucina. She is from Argentina, and she was in Abu Dhabi at Ferrari World making huge, huge money. So much money she could support her parents who are doctors in Buenos Aires and prove their Italian ancestry and get them Italian passports and citizenship. So she lives in Spain now, and she's kind of at the tail end of her performing career. So she's now a video editor, and she's working with me for my Circus Suites media kind of docu-series project. And it's wonderful because as an artist, she is in the circus, and
Yeah.
we've been working together for half of her life. And if I wanted to distill a 3-minute circus act into a 45-second clip, she knows exactly as a video editor, but also as a circus artist. So just like any business, you find great people, you make it consumable, and then you try and sell it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so want to kind of explore a little more about what you've done there, and I've had in my in the episodes we've done, I've brought in a couple of people that have some unique stories, and these guys, Gil Holland, who has done some amazing work here in Louisville, but is also a movie producer up in New York. He's got
Yeah.
this interesting dual life, and then Jeff Marietta, who's a partner of Gil's over in Eastern Kentucky. They've taken these really creative approaches to restoring basically dilapidated old communities that people were kind of giving up on, and have made them into some amazing areas. Nulu here in Louisville, and Harlan County in Eastern Kentucky. And you're doing something similar with your passion of the circus, brewing, and also real estate, which you haven't mentioned. You got an interest in real estate. So you've kind of taken these three things and come up with a very creative solution for kind of, how would I call it, community reinvigoration or revitalization. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Wonderful. No, thank you. I had the great pleasure to meet Jeff Marietta. I went to a SOAR conference. This is a Saving Our Appalachian Region, and I attended, because I wanted to see and hear how and what they're doing. This was I think this was before the pandemic. Yeah, and it was neat to go down to Hazard. I mean, why not? Why not go to Hazard? I mean, I grew up watching the Dukes of Hazzard. It was not a hard. It was not a hard. Do I have a window of time to do it? Yes. Is there a room available at the Holiday Inn Express? Yes. All right, we'll check the box. Let's go.
Yeah.
And to meet Jeff there was fantastic because, and I didn't know as much of his background until I listened to your podcast. And I've never met Gil Holland. We've spoken on the phone because he crowdfunded a brewery, and I crowdfunded a brewery. So it's a neat way of looking at things. And Jeff, they're doing it. They're doing the work, and it's really inspiring. And what I learned listening to your podcast, it was cool. So Hope is 20, and after we trained yesterday, we went out for dinner, and she was, we're just talking about what's up? She's like, well, I'm watching The Sopranos now, Dad, and she's like, wow, because we went to this Italian place for dessert. A great new place. They got number 2 restaurant in the United States. So a plug for my friends in Covington.
Wow.
Carmelo's is what it's
Okay.
called, and this is I believe the USA Today, but it was great. We went to a Korean place because she's really like Asian food. So Riverside Korean. I'll just do a couple commercial breaks for my friends up here in Northern
I got to
Kentucky.
charge these people now for
Oh, good.
commercial.
No, please add them on. Add them on the mix. So, but what was neat is was so fantastic because just like I'm bragging on, Raina and Lucina, that's essentially exactly what Gil did. He found this artist, Edie Falco, who was a great actress and doing independent theater in New York, and all of a sudden, like, she's on Sopranos, and I get to like kind
Yeah.
of share that with Hope, like, yeah, you don't know who you're working with. So you got to do your best all of the time, and it's all just like in the industry, it's who you know, and she's been to 18 different countries now at 20 years old performing as an artist, and
Oh, wow.
it's a lot of them connections that have been created through our business, to keep
Yeah.
it simple. And it was just neat to have her talk about the the Sopranos, and then hear that Gil is a part of his career is
Mhm.
connecting people like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's it's neat. So in Ludlow specifically, that's what we've done. We've brought in artists. I bought an old movie theater in 2009, and the building was rough. I mean, holes in the roof, lots of mold, lead-based paint on the ceiling. Um, Nobody wanted to touch it. Giant
Yeah.
mess. And as a clown, I love a mess. Like every Charlie Chaplin episode is clown gets in trouble. Let's watch clown get out of trouble, And then
Mhm.
same thing with the Muppet Show. Kermit gets in trouble. Scooter. My uncle owns a theater. How are we going to make rent? Well, I hope Cher comes so we can better. So, same thing. Bart
Yeah.
Simpson. Bart gets in trouble. So it's all repeated. So the
Mhm.
movie theater is where we hosted all these artists. And John, if you're my
Yeah.
landlord, you're not going to let me hang people from the ceiling and light stuff on fire. Like, you're just not going to let us do it because there's a perceived risk. Well, there is a risk,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
a perceived liability. And I'd
Sure.
say that circus people, we mitigate risk more often than almost any other industry, more than
Yeah.
the SWAT team. I won't get into special forces. 747 pilots take off and land every day with a couple hundred people in their plane. But circus people, when I was with Ringling, we did 3 shows a Saturday, 3 shows a Sunday, and things that were dangerous.
Yeah. So you found this old dilapidated building. You said, I think you told me that like the electrical was from you know, 100 years ago. It had to be completely replaced. All sorts of things. You took advantage of some grants and that sort of thing. So you had to get creative
No,
with kind of
no,
the.
grants a slippery slope. I
Okay.
got the building on the National Historic Registry, which was
There
a
you
which
go.
was a hard process. Okay,
Yeah.
but and some people are really like the hysterical, and I'm like, yes, the hyster. It is. It can be that's one way of looking at it. But in New York City, I lived in Manhattan, and I had to pay $8,000 to rent an apartment in 1998. So
Wow.
I said, that was just for the privilege. That was a fee. It wasn't a down payment. It was a fee to the broker for the privilege to rent this apartment. Now it
Yeah.
had a roof patio. It was a 2 bedroom in Manhattan. I mean, it was slick. But so I said I need to understand this real estate. So I got my real estate license, passed the real estate exam in New York City, and I learned about air rights, EPA Superfund sites, and hysterical tax credits. So I've used those tactics in Northern Kentucky. So yeah, we got it was 20% of the build out is in a federal tax credit, and there was a $60,000 refundable state of Kentucky tax credit. And it took 7 years to get the permission to restore the marquee on the front of the Ludlow
Oh,
Theater,
wow.
and the marquee was $70,000, and the state of Kentucky gave us $60,000 in a tax credit. So it's still a lot of money to spend on a
Yeah.
sign for a clown, but all those eyeballs driving past every day. And one of my favorite jobs was to change the letters on the marquee and let people know who was coming. And then every band that would play, all the selfies. Everybody loves their name and lights. So
Yeah.
if I still had it, I'd have put it up there, John Jennings, Simply Buddy podcast, Simply
Yeah.
Business podcast, because again,
Oh
we
man,
all,
missed an opportunity.
no, there'll be plenty more.
Well, so I love the story you told me before about, the analogy of the popcorn, and you turned that more into beer, right?
Yeah.
Kind of. So explain that. This is back part of the business brilliance. You're very humble about it, but I mean, it is so simple. But tell us about the popcorn analogy, and then what you've done with beer.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for the segue. So let's talk. The theater would be the big top. Okay. The big top is, and then the circus, the draw, or we would host wrestling or knights fighting in armor, or we did bicycle polo, and we did drag shows, like everything imaginable. We were like a island of misfit toys. Okay. Like if you wanted to do something bonkers, come to the Ludlow Theater, home of Circus Mojo and the Bircus Brewing Company. So Bircus Brewing Company, that would be the concessions arm of the circus, okay? Because that's how a circus makes money. When I was with Ringling Brothers, this is, let's see, 1997, they're selling a $9 box of popcorn, okay? Now the box costs 2 cents. The popcorn costs half a cent or nothing by the time the volume of popcorn they're buying. Now, I don't know who else has that margin. Okay. I don't know that Elon Musk, the margin on a Tesla is not that,
nothing like
even
that.
ad space on Instagram, OPEC, the Medellin cartel, Pfizer, Moderna, nobody sells something for $9 that costs 2.5 cents. So the circus is concessions driven. So I met a friend in Berlin at the NICE conference, the Network for International Circus Educators. So Matthias is more of community development guy. Circus is his tool of community development, but he brewed collaboration beers with a lot of breweries in Ghent, Belgium. So Bircus is kind of a brand, is his idea. And when I met him in Berlin in 2011, I said, man, that sounds really cool. Could I do that in the United States? And he's like, yeah, just, absolutely. If you give me credit. So I'm giving Matthias credit. We don't have, if we trademark it, we were supposed to tell him it's a neat concept. So we were, at the theater, we were selling a $7 glass of beer that would cost around 30 cents. So, like we would want butts in the seats. We would want people to come and see our shows. And we added a pizzeria during the pandemic, and we saw 1.3 beers per person, or 1.5 beers per person to 3.6 beers per person, because they were there longer. They were eating pizza, but before pizza, we were smoking corn dogs, because when the world shut down, Kentucky was great. You had to have a full menu in order to have your restaurant open, and you could have 20% capacity, and that was hard for restaurants. But our space, that was 60 people. So I went to Restaurant Depot in Cincinnati, and they didn't have much. They had a bunch of halal goats, but I wasn't going to get into cooking goat because I don't know goat. But they had I bought every box they had of corn dogs. And then I bought like 6 pounds, or maybe I bought 6 giant cases of Hebrew National all beef kosher wieners. So they were gluten-free and they were kosher, like 2 key elements in your complete menu. And then a case of corn. So we had vegetarian, vegan, gluten-free, kosher, and carnivore. So we had corn dogs, dogless corn, and cornless dogs. So it was so silly, but we sold a lot of beer. We turned our parking lot into a beer garden, and we really hit our stride in the pandemic. So it was interesting, but the concessions, that's the key element of the circus. You need the big top, the space, you need the draw, the circus, and you need a consumable.
I think I told you I have a friend who has a microbrewery in another state. Their rules were you had to serve food. It didn't have to be a full menu. They had to serve food, and they could only stay and drink as long as the food they were still eating. So they would sell them a hot dog at $1, They didn't make anything off the
Yeah.
hot dog, right?
Right.
Sold them the hot dog $1, and they were instructed to leave the last bite on your plate until you're done
Uh-huh.
drinking.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Hey, you
You
know,
know?
hey, it's all I just and then it was funny because I was running a bus at the time. Like in Cincinnati, there's a thing, the South Bank Shuttle, and it's Northern Kentucky, and it goes through Bellevue, Newport, Cincinnati, and Covington. And I was trying to get it to come to Ludlow because we subsidize it. Ludlow taxpayers pay for this thing. So I was trying to get the
Sure.
South Bank Shuttle to come to Ludlow, and my lobbying efforts didn't work. So
Okay.
I bought a school bus, which is hard to do to buy a clean title school bus, but it had a 1 million-mile Caterpillar engine. It had 300,000 miles on it, and that's about how long a bus is allowed to stay on the road. So we
Mm.
got it from Kenton County Schools. One of our 330 investors fixes buses, so he knew I was on the lookout. So we got the bus for a song, and we started running a distilling and brewing tours, the Northern Kentucky micro brewing and distilling tour. So it started in Ludlow with Second Sight Spirits, who are some more plugs for my friends. These
Yeah.
guys built props with Cirque du Soleil, so they have a distillery right across the street. Bircus was there at the theater. Then it would go to um, Covington, and it would go to the hall. Let's see, in Covington, the pickup was Braxton Brewing Company, and then
Mm.
after Braxton, it went to Newport at the Hofbrau House, and then it went to Braxton Labs in Newport, and then it went to Darkness. It went to a distillery. It went to Wooden Cask Brewing Company in Newport. Anyway, it went around the loop.
Yeah.
And the driver, when are we going to close? When are you going to close, Paul? And I said, we're going to close. I don't know when Disney World closes, the Bircus Brewing Company will close. Well,
Yeah.
it was March 14th, which I celebrate as Pi Day. 3.14159. So that's Pi Day because we always have a big pie
Right.
fight in my company. So that's one of the HR adventures. Everybody pies the clown, and and it was a weird. And nobody, I said, well, show up if you want to work, but we're not going to close. It's a Saturday. And I was like, and we've got our 30 people want to ride the bus today. Most of them were on Groupons. And if you wanted to go and celebrate the end of times, some people were going to celebrate it. And so if you wanted to stay at home, you were going to stay at home. And it just is a fun way of looking at, what are we going to do? Do we want to be worried about things or do we want to celebrate things? And that's really the ethos that's what I hire towards, and that's who I work with. And,
Mm.
it's really simply get down to it. There's miserable rich people and there's miserable poor people, so we parlay in joy is what we work to do.
Yeah, yeah, and you've used the word joy before, and I love that word. I use it as well. So so we could stop here and everybody go, "Wow, he's an interesting guy. That's a crazy business he's built," and you've gone through and you don't run that anymore. You sold that you sold the theater off, right? So
Yes.
So the thing that just again just impresses me about what you're doing because you've taken all these passions and now you're trying to take this on the road, so to speak. You're trying to go global, if you will, with this concept. So yeah, so this is like, okay, you proved it in Ludlow, Kentucky. And by the way, I'm through Northern Kentucky all the time. I don't think I've ever been to Ludlow. I'm gonna have to get there, sometime now. I've probably flown over it landing at Greater Cincinnati Airport, I bet. But but you're probably right in that flight path almost. But anyway, tell us now about the your dream, your goal that you're now pursuing of taking this Ludlow concept to the world.
Well, I think one of the most important exports here in Kentucky would be Kentucky Fried Chicken. All right, and they have a secret recipe, secret spices. So we'll call it Kentucky Fried Circus or maybe Kentucky Fresh Circus. But our recipe is, bring a circus to your community. Find an old empty building, work with local kids who are maybe causing trouble. I myself am a troublemaker. Import talent and I've worked closely with the Kentucky Cabinet for Economic Development. So for 11 years, I've worked with their STEP grant. It's the State Technical Export Program because Kentucky is the 7th leading exporter in the United States of America. So I I am very fortunate to work with some very connected, intelligent, and patient people. So Chris Simpson is a friend of mine, and he was a combat engineer all over a lot of conflicts with the Army, and was then went to U.S. Commercial Services. So Chris helped me translate my business as an educational thing. So Circus Mojo was educational, and then the Bircus Brewing Company, we export tons of bourbon, maybe yeah, gallons, volumes, an incredible amount of bourbon. So last year with the STEP grant, I was able to make it to Cape Town, South Africa. Had a meeting there at the U.S. consulate that Chris Simpson helped set up. I was in Uganda, Rwanda, and Kenya, and I was at the Rwandan embassy, and we registered our business, the Bircus East Africa branch. So we are building a brewery in Rwanda with partners there, an incredible group of circus people. There's a guy, Jonathan Irakaza. Jonathan is a kid from Rwanda that had incredible challenges. 1994, 1 million people were killed in 100 days. And my ethos is poor lives matter. Black lives, white lives over there, it didn't. Black lives matter. I mean, it was the Hutus and the Tutsis were killing each other, but it was manipulation of poor people killing poor people so that the high caste could control things. But Jonathan went to Sweden as a young man with Clowns Without Borders. Okay. So we've all heard of Doctors Without Borders. Well, guess
Clowns
what?
Without Borders. Didn't know there was such a thing.
So Jonathan has an incredible group of kids who ride bicycles artistically, and they're incredible. They're absolutely what they do on bicycles, standing on them, doing shoulder stands, acrobatics is incredible. So they train outside. So we're going to be building a brewery with a pre-existing circus in the capital of Rwanda. And I have an architect friend who's from Lebanon, Nasser Chama, and Nasser, because he's from Lebanon, has a big passion for refugees. So he is working with me to design this out of shipping containers so we could design it here and ship it over there. And then at the tail end of the year, I made my second trip to Colombia. Outside of Bogota, there's a place called Sesquile, and a gentleman, Juan Carlos Vicente, he has a brewery called Don Vicente Brewing Company, and he makes beer out of quinoa, which is their local grain is quinoa. Okay. So his margin is great because he's not importing grain. When we were making beer, we would import grain from Bamberg, Germany, a very fancy Pilsner malt that everyone uses for their Pilsner, Weyermann malts. So you think of how much money you spend buying a bag of grain from halfway around the world. So he grows the quinoa and they malt it. He works with farmers. He doesn't grow, but he buys quinoa from local farmers, makes beer. And he's right by their biggest cultural asset, the legend of El Dorado. It's called the Guatavita. It's a lagoon. So we're building a circus on a pre-existing brewing company. So he races polo horses and has a lot of land and acreage at his farm, and the same shipping container, circus housing, artistic training, venue. So we have sites that I've been site selection that I've been working on for many, many years, and relationship building. So in 2026, we'll be breaking ground in Kigali, Rwanda, and outside of Bogota in Sesquile, Colombia. So we're going global. And again, if you can do it in Ludlow, why not? Why not do it?
Why not? I loved what you said when you said all you need is an old building, some local hooligans, and import some circus talent.
Yeah.
I mean, seems like a pretty easy formula, because every town has old buildings. And every town has some hooligans, and if you can import the talent, and then of course come up with what the concession, the beer that you're going to make the high margin on, and you've got a business.
Well, my hope now is like with here's the consumable now. This is the popcorn. All right, this is the circus. Like everything is on the phone, and with Circus Suites, this is the concept. To make a media project, call it a TV show, call it a docuseries, call it a reality television. But my host and good friend, he won America's Got Talent season 6. His name is Landau Eugene Murphy Jr. So he's
Okay.
got dreads down to his waist. He's an African American guy that sounds just like Frank Sinatra. So
Oh wow.
there's no better
Okay.
American export that I'm concerned with. A homeless guy who wins AGT, who wins $1 million, who was homeless, who sounds like Frank Sinatra. Like these are the greatest hits of the
Can't
United
make that
States.
up, right?
No, so he's the host on the show, and Jerry Springer was a friend of mine. He performed twice at the Ludlow Theater. He'd come and fly in his jet to record a podcast in Ludlow. So like it is again the model is it's simple, right? Now you have to put in the time and you have to have the connections. You got to be patient, fill out the paperwork.
Yeah.
But that is, I guess that's the simple way to look at it and find the partners. Like I'm not just bumbling my way into Colombia. My
Yeah.
translator, Andreas Duque, he designed the logo for my first circus team in Chicago, and
Mm.
he subletted my apartment in Manhattan for 3 or 4 years. And when I went to Colombia 2.5 years ago with our brewer Tony, he joined us, and I hired Andreas to be our translator because.
Yeah.
I
You need
I
that.
don't speak much Spanish. I say loco gringo payaso, crazy white clown. All right. So that's gotten me out of a lot of trouble. But
Oh, that's
that
great.
that's the but as far as troublemakers go, I think we're at a critical time in transitioning. And I think I worked with kids at the Hamilton County Juvenile Detention Center, and we had
That's
a job
Cincinnati, right?
in Cincinnati.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we all have a problem, like I think that's what all businesses should solve a problem, and get people to pay for it. That was in, I think that Jeff talked about that in his podcast, or maybe Gil, but it was like first you have to find a problem, then you got to get somebody to pay for it. And kids in jail is a problem, and we called it vocational training. And I worked with a clinical psychologist, Dr. Jenny O'Donnell, and she said, we're not going to talk about circus. We're going to call it skills training. They're going to wear a uniform. They're going to show up on time. They're going to learn how to use tools and take care of their tools. And then they're going to demonstrate success. Maybe there's a few other things, but circus was never mentioned.
Right.
And if you're good at stealing cars, you are perfect for the circus. You are focused and you are fearless. And the only way we can make more jails and roads and churches, not churches, well, I don't know, is create more taxpayers. So that's. But then Governor Kasich came to power. He privatized the prison. So private prisons. There's a lot of money there. But is that good for us? I don't know. So
Yeah.
it's a strange days. But the circus is everywhere, and we're excited to explore how we can make it happen.
Yeah. Well, I've enjoyed this. You are entertaining as you would expect a clown to be. And I'm really glad you didn't come in full makeup and stuff. That may have. But by the way, we went to the circus with our kids. My son was probably a year old, and he terrified of the clown. Terrified. I ended up having to, take him out because he was just screaming bloody murder. So it wasn't just clowns, though. It ended up being anybody in any kind of costume at a theme park or whatever. His first few years, and he still to this day talks about, clowns, kind of freak him out. So
we have sold billions and billions of cheeseburgers. Okay, like clowns.
Yeah.
I mean, clowns. We are effective.
You are.
We are very effective.
And probably that percentage of people who are freaked out by clowns probably been because of some specific horror movies and a few other things that have just kind of tainted the industry, if you will. But I love how you've got this vision for going global. I mean, it's just amazing concept. And you've taken, passions of yours, you learned, I'd say the clown part's the passion, but you also found an interest in real estate, you found an interest in brewing, and you kind of pulled all those together into building one kind of crazy, wacky kind of business, but proving it works,
Well, I would be dead in jail or in the circus. Okay. And, like the circus, that's what the circus is really known for is working with, It's really interesting. If I could share one more story, my mother was dealing with some skin cancer, and the doctor who ended up taking care of her was one of my former students. So I approached my art teacher, Tim Haters, when I moved back to Northern Kentucky at Covenant Catholic, and I said, I need some troublemakers to help me start my project. And Sam Heyman was a great unicycle guy and could juggle, but he wasn't a troublemaker. So he gave me Sam because he had pre-existing circus conditions. But then he gave me Elliot Campbell, who was just like trouble. And but Elliot was great. He worked with me at Cincinnati Children's Hospital for 8 years. We were delivering what we call Circus Wellness. All the
Mm,
kids on dialysis could spin plates, and the doctors
yeah.
couldn't, the nurses couldn't, the kids with two kidneys couldn't. So Elliot ended up going on to work at a place called the Mayo Clinic. That's where he did his residency, and it was just
Mm,
so neat to have Elliot. When I went to pick my mom up, hey, would you come up, Paul? And he introduced me to his, other doctor that he's in practice with and his whole staff. And, so it's the apprenticeship model of the circus
yeah.
is really important. And I was an apprentice clown, and I learned from people who, made me do the work. We loaded the train, I had to clean the soap mat, there's this apprenticeship model. And, it's neat to be in the business. I mean, anything you do for 30 years, there will be these, connections that happen, but I can't wait to share this with my friends around the world. And
Yeah.
on LinkedIn, you never know who's going to ping you on LinkedIn. So,
Right.
that's how our connection, hey, but I was just so impressed, for you to commit and achieve 100 podcasts, like that. I love that determination, John, because I think a lot of
Yeah.
people, how many people have started podcasts and have not followed through? So,
Yeah.
like that determination is commendable. So
Yeah.
I'm a fan.
Well, I enjoy it because I get to meet people like you who I never probably would have ever crossed paths with in a million years. But now, I've got this story of this clown who's built a global empire,
Well, not empire, I'm the
Well,
jester. Okay, the
as a
emperor will
coach,
run the
though, as
empire.
a coach, we set a vision, and we
Yeah,
we always talk in future terms of what it's going to be
yeah.
because you got to have that vision out there. So we're going to call it your global circus empire or whatever. And I love that. So last question, I love to ask people who are entrepreneur who have done this, or you've been down this path now for 15 plus years, you've done all these things. What advice would you give that, younger you or that younger guy out there who's, man, has some passion that he's trying to figure out how to turn into a business? What would your advice be?
My advice would be, you know, do it. I mean, and they're going to tell you can't do it, all right, or you shouldn't, or it's impossible, and that's the whole model of the circus. You should not get in a cage with lions. Yet people did that.
Yeah.
You shouldn't get shot out of a cannon. Yet I know the guy that got shot out of the cannon. He taught me how to balance things on my chin. And I get this video sent to me at least once a month of a guy at a supermarket balancing a shopping cart on his chin. And like, Paul, I'm like, yeah, that's John Weiss. He's my mentor. He taught me that, and that is, so I think that's what it is. When I was little watching National Geographic, you'd see the great white shark, and then you'd see this little remora or whatever, that little sucking thing that was on the side of the shark that was kind of like too lazy. They would just pick up whatever bits were thrown off after the
Mm,
great white went after whatever. So I was just lucky. I held on for dear life under that circus train until it was time to leave. I
yeah.
held on in New York until a better option to go to Japan. When the contract in Japan was over, I wanted to stay, but my partner Renee, she wasn't interested, so we came home. Then it was like, do we want to stay in Northern Kentucky or do we want to go to Las Vegas, where there's a lot of circus work? Do we want to go to Orlando? And I ended up getting cast in a film in independent film in Chicago. Well, then September 11th happened, and then I wanted to do something that was meaningful. So circus became the passion instead of trying to chase being an actor and things, because after September 11th, people are going to spend money on education and their children. And
Mm,
so that's riding the wave. So the young
yeah.
person that wants to do something, whether even if it's create a new app for something, all right, you just have to do it. You just
Yeah.
have to be determined And people are going to say, you can't do it. And you say, hey, hold my beer, or hold my coffee or watch,
Yeah.
because you can't do it. But by no means, you're not going to tell me what I can't do. Okay.
Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah.
So that's what
Yeah.
I would encourage.
And I think the other thing about your vision, and this is the other, I'd say do it, but also you mentioned you got to have somebody to pay for it. And that's what some people miss out on, right? Some people have a great idea, but no one's going to pay for it. And it's like, you've got something or you came up with something that's that perfect blend.
And people will pay for it.
Yeah.
But the people in charge shift and transition. Okay. Like I loved getting paid to work with kids in jail until that system changed and we had to move on. We did 8 years at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and I was so proud of the work, and it was based on a lot the Big Apple Clown Care Unit in New York and other projects that I had been a part of until they wanted to own my intellectual property. And I was like, no, thank you. All right. So that would be the other piece for entrepreneurs is own and control your intellectual property. Okay. Don't sign NDAs.
That's great advice.
I have a big mouth. I am not going to sign your NDA. Okay. You want, if someone's going to spend all that energy, then you have something. You just got to figure out who's going to buy it. And so the consumable, because free money costs a lot. The politics in nonprofits and churches are higher than any politics you'll find in any business. So nothing is free, everybody. You have to make it work.
Yeah. Great advice. Well, Paul, thank you for coming on the program. This has been a lot of fun, and I can't wait to just kind of follow this journey over the next several years. You've got some great things ahead of you, I know. So it's great to have you on.
Well, there's no business like show business. So and you're a hustler. Like you have 100 episodes. Like you are in show business. To keep it simple, that's what you're doing.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked it, please share or like it on whatever platform you use. You can find me on social media. On most platforms, I'm John K. Jennings. My first book is also available. Your Baby is Ugly tells you about 10 truths that business owners need to hear, but often won't, and how to overcome them. You can find it on Amazon. Just search for Your Baby is Ugly. And be watching for our next episode, where I'll interview another business owner who will share their stories and insights into what it's like to create a great business.